They lobby their representatives, but the representatives are the ones who are in the trenches really trying to sort it out and to come to some kinds of settlements. This is how representative democracy is structured. There are variations. There is some direct democracy that is allowed for in 24 states where they have an initiative. That is, the legislature can be bypassed and the public can vote directly on a referendum proposition. And you've got direct democracy in some town meetings, in New England in particular, where people get together and make policy. But mainly, the representational system here relies on those who are elected to serve in legislative bodies. And generally speaking, I think you will find that these people faithfully represent their constituencies. Now, they do this for very obvious reasons. First, they believe that it is part of the representative's job to represent your constituency. Secondly, they had better do it or they will be looking for other jobs. And thirdly, they really are at one with their district. They're not aliens to their district. They're at one with their district, or at least with the majority of people in their district. That is to say, Democrats tend to be elected from districts with Democratic majorities and Republicans from districts with Republican majorities. And they look primarily on some of the major issues that divide the parties. They look primarily at their majority voter support. I should mention here that people are also represented by political parties and by political interest groups to which they may or may not belong. As far as interest groups are concerned, well, we regard, or the Americans regard, interest groups, special interests as we call them derogatorily, as public enemy number one. And yet, 7 out of 10 Americans is a member, a card-carrying member of one interest group or another. Third, take the nature of legislators themselves. I think this is a lesson that people have got to digest. I mean, most people are cynical about legislators. Not their own legislator. They like their own legislator. They vote to return their own legislator. If you ask public opinion polls, 70% think their own legislator is pretty good. But most of our legislators run for office in order to do the right thing. Now, it may not be my right thing, and it may not be your right thing, but it may be the right thing of most of their constituents, and it may be their personal right thing. They want to advance ideas they believe in. Fourth, the nature of the legislature as an institution in the legislative process. You start off with the legislators. These legislators have conflicting values, interests, and priorities. And you add to this mix the fact that these legislators represent constituents who have different and conflicting values, interests, and priorities. And you spice it all up with partisan conflict, which both reflects and contributes to public differences. And you lay on top of all of this the element of accountability, which is enforced by the requirement that legislators every 2 or 4 years have to run for re-election. Well, this is the environment in which each legislator tries to promote an agenda in which he or she believes, and in which the legislature tries, by majority rule or greater consensus, to reach settlements on issues. Now, just about anything can make it to the legislature's agenda. Not everything can make it into law. And reaching an agreement requires a process of study, of deliberation over substantive merits, over political merits, or demerits on policy proposals. It requires negotiation. It requires strategizing. It requires usually compromise, all in order to get the necessary votes the majority votes that are needed at successive stages of the process to get a bill to becoming a law. I think legislatures do what they're supposed to do in a representative democracy. They certainly provide access to people and groups. They certainly represent constituencies and constituents. And the legislature engages in study and deliberation and negotiations. And it usually arrives at a settlement, not a solution, a settlement, because nothing is forever and everything is open at the next session. I would say the legislature is not only a means to an end, and not even primarily a means to an end, the end being health policy or tax policy or prosperity for citizens. I would say that the legislature is an end itself because it provides a process by which we settle disagreements and values, interests, and preferences, and we do it by a democratic means. The legislature and the process are what are most important, not any particular policy outcome. I mean, I may be bleary-eyed from all these years of watching state legislatures, but I think they work. I think they work remarkably well, but by no means perfect. I think they can work better, and they probably should be working better. The question is, how do we get them to work better? And on that, I assure you, we will all disagree. Thank you.